Zach, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good.
It's been a bit since we've spoken. I was a student reporter when you were a player, and now look at us.
A
We've
long
really
time
made
ago,
it.
right? Feels like a
um,
long time ago.
every time I think about like 2015 and think about like that being like, I guess it's like 7 years ago now. It really does a number on me thinking about that. But um,
You
quite a
too.
time for
Yeah.
you, man. A lot of things have changed since then, as far as like the OU football program. And I bring you on today not only just to get your insight as a former player, uh, but you, for people who don't follow you on Twitter, need to know that you provide a lot of commentary. You've got a lot of thoughts, and I thought there was no better person to go to than you. Um, it's been a strange time for Oklahoma. Brent Venables, the new head coach. They brought in Jerry Schmidt back as strength and conditioning coach. What do you make of just kind of the last like 2 months or month and a half of Oklahoma football? Just kind of seeing this almost kind of nostalgic push toward what OU was kind of during the Bob Stoops era, and bringing a guy like Brent Venables back.
I think it was huge, man. To be honest, I never really wavered or really had any doubt. I mean, Joe C is one of the best ADs in the country, period. And I know he listens to obviously Bob. I'm pretty sure Bob had major input in it, and then just how many former players that the BV was like immediately, for a lot of us. And me not even being personally coached by him, but he's the one that offered me. That's who I got my offer from. So just that relationship in itself, and that exchange that we had, and knowing what type of player he is, and then obviously hearing from the guys that did play under him, just how intense it was. And you could just tell that's something we lost, man. The whole Lincoln situation was wild. It's wild. It was as wild as it was for us. I'm sure in that locker room was 10 times, tenfold of what just fans and whole alumni were experiencing. But man, I couldn't be happy with the hiring of. I mean, obviously BV bringing Schmitty back is huge. Obviously having Russ back, his number two is huge, and then the staff that Coach Venables has put together is. I mean, it speaks for itself. You know what I'm saying? Like. And that was just one thing. I was like, bro, I'm not worried about it. At the end of the day, this is Oklahoma. Like, a lot of people can attach blue blood to some of these schools, but even some of these blue bloods that are in the thick of it, I mean, you can really only name us and Bama and Georgia has come on late, but that have been in since 2000 through the 2010s, through this decade. Like, we've had some up and down seasons. We haven't been able to put it all together yet. But I think bringing Coach Venables back is what we needed. And obviously you look back at all the national championship teams, the defenses were, it was the defenses that I wouldn't say won those games, but you could tell that front of those teams and were the head team of those teams. And I think we're getting back to that. And I think we'll win one within the next 3 or 4 years, to be honest with you, because Levy knows what he's doing on that side of the ball.
For sure. I did want to get kind of just into you with kind of that identity that Oklahoma went away from. I think almost, I don't want to say when you were there, but it felt like there was a transition process from like those early 2010 teams to like what they were under Lincoln Riley. Before getting into that though, I mean, I kind of wanted to ask you just a little bit about lead up to your OU career. You mentioned just missing out on Brent Venables. I mean, I think he was Clemson's defensive coordinator the year that you arrived as a true freshman at OU in 2012. Before that, though, and I just because I looked you up on Wikipedia because I just wanted to make sure I had all my facts straight. You were originally committed to Baylor, is that correct?
Yes.
What changed with you? Like, what brought you to Oklahoma?
Man, to be honest, I think I told this story on JD's podcast a couple of years ago, but I don't know, man. It was like in the late December. I'm sitting in my car and I just left the field house in my high school, and I'm just something on me was just like, man, just call Venables to see if they're still recruiting DBs. And I called them. It just so happened that they had that big coaches conference in San Antonio, so he had just talked to my head coach of all people. I think the day before. And, from that point, they reviewed my film. And then I think he called me back like 2 days later. and was like, yeah, we're gonna offer you. You know, I loved you on film, this, that, and the third. And then he called me 2 days after that and told me he was leaving. But for me at that point, bro, I wanted the offer. It was just something inside me that I just felt like I could play at a big school. You know, that was just one thing I wanted to prove to myself, that I could do it. And obviously Baylor at that point was on the rise, obviously RG3 and things like that. But I don't know, man. I couldn't even tell you where it came from. It was just literally one day I was just sitting in my car. I was like, I'm just gonna call him, see where it goes from it. And it kind of just sparked everything.
Did you have a really good impression, I guess, of what Brent Venables was at the time? Because I think people do kind of forget I mean, he was that guy at Clemson. He was that guy at OU. And I'm
Yeah.
curious, just like, what was it like to get that offer from a guy like Brent Venables? What did you think of him at the time as far as the defensive coordinator goes?
I mean, obviously that was around that Shark era, right? When all the Shark stuff had started. So
I
just seeing the way
completely
those guys,
forgot about that.
yeah, man. But just seeing the guys flying around like AC, obviously TJ, and I think I just remember their freshman year when they played Nebraska in the Big 12 championship game, and just seeing how many young guys were on the field flying around, and you could just tell, man, the intensity that they had on defense, and I just wanted to be a part of something like that. And obviously, I didn't know too much about him as a coach, but I could just in the play that I saw, kind of just speaks for who they were getting coached by, you know, what type of guy was leading that group. So that's what it was for me, man. And then obviously just the having that soon as across your chest, there's really nothing like it.
I was gonna say, man, that brings me back. I know you weren't around for it, but you might remember it's been 11 years now, but ESPN did like a full, like kind of like Hard Knocks thing with Oklahoma.
Yeah, the training camp.
Yeah, and I just anytime someone mentions Sharks, I think about like they did a whole segment about it. And it feels like looking back on that now, it's just like it's a whole different world of OU football compared to like what it's been recently. Is it, as a defensive guy, man, is it refreshing? I would assume it would be refreshing to like kind of see OU kind of go back to that identity of being a defensive first football team.
100%, man. Like 1,000%. You know, like our defense in 2013 was one of the best. Obviously in the Big 12, and then you know we just had guys make plays everywhere. And then again in 2015, we were able to put it together again. You know, and have a pretty good unit there, even with a whole bunch of young guys on the D line and in the back end. But yeah, you could definitely see the switch from just how flashy we became after that. I mean, obviously bringing Lincoln in. You know, you can say what he wanted about the way he left. He's a hell of a coach at the end of the day, and he did transform our offense, which is what we did need. But you know how it is when you become an offensive school, everything becomes flashy, social media stuff, and you kind of get those type of recruits. Not really as many hard-nosed guys. Obviously, we've had guys that came in through that era that could play defense. Obviously, K9, Nev, JT, Steve, all those guys. You know, and then some of these guys now, like Nick, Big Winfrey, you know, all those guys. Brian. So, you know, there's still a trickle of those guys there, but I think as a unit, it kind of, you know, it was hit or miss throughout the years. And I think having Venables back, and especially having Smitty back, I think is the biggest part of that, just from your attitude from a day-to-day basis.
Do you have any Schmitty horror stories that you'd like to vent or, you know, get off your chest?
Too many. So like my freshman year when we first got there, I guess they had a rough winter, so Schmitty just had it out for the DBs. Like we started on the track every day. That was the first. We didn't even warm up. It was just point to the track, and I'm just like, bro, what the hell's going on? He's like, yeah, he don't like us, bro. So warming up 250s, we'd run probably like six to eight 250s, and then we'd go in and start a workout. Like so, that's what I had to come into just from that. But I mean, the workouts were, looking back on them, you could, and like going through the season, you could tell why he does what he does. But like going through it, of course you hate it. Like, I mean, just the med ball partner stuff. And then the worst part would be like at the end of workouts, when we do our hip mobility stuff over these ladders. And I just remember one time, like it had been a rough day. We probably did like 5 sets of med balls. Dudes were passing out left and right, getting kicked out. And we get down to the ladders, or to the hip mobility stuff with the hurdles. And TJ, of course, of all people, is just like, clink, clink. He's just saying clink, 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 clink. Like, so of course somebody starts hitting the hurdles. Got to go back and do another set of med balls. By this time, like my stomach's cramping up. I don't even know like how I'm still in the workout. So we do another set of 50, go back to the hurdles. TJ still doing it, clank, clank, like trying to be funny. You know how TJ is, man. Like in my head, I'm like, bro, just shut up, please, just shut up. Again, so we probably did like 4 more sets of med balls because TJ just wanted to be a jokester, and Schmidt did not care. Like he did not care. We ended up all getting kicked out. Had to come back at 3 o'clock the next day and redo the whole workout because of TJ. So like, I remember Cheesy was pissed off at TJ. You know. Another safety we had, Big Jesse, was pissed off. Like, but it was just many times like that, bro. It was just somebody want to be funny, and that shit ends up biting us in the ass. But it was all worth it. I would say that.
I'm sure you probably haven't given a lot of thought to this, but can you imagine Tony Jefferson in the NIL era of like what he would come up with?
Man, I mean, I know y'all still, the YouTube videos are still there from when he was a freshman, and like, we in the group messages all the time, like we're always getting on his ass about that. Like, what were you thinking, bro? The Kim Kardashian posters, like, could you imagine like him now? I mean, he would have made a shitload of money, don't get me wrong, just because of how entertaining he is. You know how animated that guy is. He would have killed it. Him, Kenny, like the Cali trio alone would have made $1 million a piece, probably, you know?
Well, I just like remember that was the time that like Wiz Khalifa's like Black and Yellow was popping off, and he had like the Boomer Sooner remix. This is like OG, like OU Twitter stuff, but like I think he started a podcast and then Compliant shut it down. I'm pretty sure. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure that's right. But Tony Jeff was to watch. We mentioned the ESPN, Hard Knocks kind of thing that they did. Tony Jefferson in that is just it's terrific. He's a character.
He is, bro, 100%, bro. Like, and like we just joke about it now. Like he's married, has kids. Like we were like, bro, I never thought I'd see the day that you were married and have kids and actually serious about something. Like, so, but it's good. I mean, I'm just glad to see him back in the league balling again. But TJ's number one, bro, number one character, obviously.
To kind of go back a little bit, you mentioned kind of the guys that have come through as far as just OU's been an offensive team, but they produce a lot of high profile defensive guys in the NFL, like a Kenneth Murray, Neville Gallimore. You at the time, with guys like Charles Tapper, Eric Stryker, Dominique Alexander, I feel like you guys were a little bit of a foundation for as far as just getting OU defense back. And I don't want to like misquote you because I remember talking to you back in 2015. I think it was early in the season. You guys were, I think, still undefeated at this point. And I was doing a story about like kind of the defensive resurgence from 2014. And you kind of talked about the defense getting more serious just as far as the leadership. What was it like playing with that group, like an Eric Stryker, like a Tapper? I mean, that I don't think people think about that 2015 team a whole lot, just as far as like being a defensive juggernaut. But I mean, you guys are the ones who kept, when Baker Mayfield was still kind of figuring things out, kept OU in those football games.
I mean, just honestly, bro, it's just everything that went through, that off season, with the frat stuff, the SAE stuff. We just became a whole unit. And then that was just one thing, like when Strike, Tap, and Shep didn't leave, and then, obviously, if they would have left, I would have been gone too, to be honest. But them staying, me, Strike, and Tap all moving in together, we were just like, we can't have a repeat of last year. Like that's just, we're not going out like that. We all knew at that time that this was our last year together. And it was just a decision that we made. Like we weren't going to go through that shit again. Like that was just unacceptable on all ends. So we made it our obligation to the young guys. Like, look, bro, we told them straight up, this was like during winter workouts. And I told all the DBs, like, I'm out of here. So like everything we put in is, to get obviously to the playoffs. That was the first year of the playoffs, or second year maybe. But I was like, everything we put in, whether it be winter, summer, I'm gonna ask everything. I'm gonna bust y'all's ass. I'm gonna be on y'all's ass. I want y'all to get on my ass. Like, and that was just one thing we all held each other accountable. We never slacked. Me, Tap, Strike. We made sure that we were the head of everything, and that we set an example. And man, we just had a good group of young guys. Like obviously Ahmad, Steve, and then when JT and them got there in the summer, they just hopped right along, and there was just no drop off, man. And we just set the tone, like. Because, man, 2014 it was atrocious. Like, especially being a defensive guy, being a DB, like our pass defense, it was just bad all the way around. So we just, we had a mindset from the jump, and obviously Smitty, he was like, that shit's, he was like, y'all are here at Oklahoma. That shit is not acceptable. So, we just had to make a decision. That's one thing we used to talk about today. We're just proud that we were able to set that foundation to run into those 6 straight Big 12 titles. Whether those defenses, people can talk about them now, they still were good enough to win Big 12 titles and get into playoff games. But it's always been like every year, like we couldn't piece everything together. Our 2015 year, our O-line was damn near all freshmen. That was Zeus and all them freshman year, and they were going against 3 or 4 first rounders on Clemson's D-line. So it was just tough, man. It's just like we could never obviously put it all together. But just going back to that 2015 offseason, it was just so much that we went through as a team that just set us up for that year. And you could just feel it throughout the offseason, through summer workouts, that it was just going to be one of those years. So it was just really good to be the head of that, especially on the defensive side.
To take a step back for a second, I mean, you mentioned just, if a few guys had left, was a guy like Shep, I think you might have mentioned Stryker, but like, was that just a product of what had happened that offseason? Were just guys thinking about going to the pros? I mean,
to be honest, it wasn't for all of us. It wasn't even even thinking about the NFL. Our main thing was like, we want to win a national championship and obviously a Big 12 championship before we get out of here. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like TJ and all them, AC, they've experienced that, as being Big 12 champs. And obviously we split one our freshman year, but, we didn't feel like that was ours. So like we wanted to leave our stamp there and to be able to win that Big 12 championship and then obviously going to the playoffs that first year was just huge for us. That was the main goal, man, is to get there and obviously win, which we came up short. But it was never man, we're doing this for the league or anything like that. It's like, we're getting this to put OU back where it needs to be, at the forefront of college football. And that was just the mindset. Like nobody was thinking about their own selfish stuff or their own personal goals. Just everybody collectively was worried about winning.
Gotcha. I remember that time, and 2014. It's not like you guys were, and I'm not just saying all this stuff to like gas you up because you're on my podcast, but in 2014 you had so many close games that could have went differently. I looking back, I think like, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, just a bunch of just like kind of one possession games could have went either way. You guys put it together in 2015, just as far as, winning a Big 12 title and getting that Orange Bowl, a bit banged up. I mean, if you want to put the asterisk on it, because I remember being on the shuttle from Fort Lauderdale going down to Miami Gardens and like getting a text from someone was like, "Hey, Charles Walker's not playing." I'm like, well, that's not going to be good.
That hurt us so much, man. Like, yeah, that was huge. That was a huge loss for us.
Was that? I mean, just that season overall, because I think Joe Mixon got hurt in that game, or at least was hurt, pretty early in that game. I think even Baker got a little banged up in that game. Just was that just kind of like, I don't want to say the wheels falling off in a negative way, but just like it just felt like you guys kind of everything that you guys gave to that season just kind of felt like, kind of just fell apart in that one.
Yeah, it's just, when that injury bug hits you, it's really inevitable. There's nothing you can do about it. It's just bad timing, on our end. You think about those last 3 games, and some of the teams that we faced and the injuries that they had, the big injuries that they had, that people think would have made a difference, probably would have made the games more entertaining. But I still, to this day, none of those 3 teams were beating us, regardless of who was playing and who wasn't. But then, we just got a taste of that medicine in our biggest game of the year, which was tough, man. But, that's part of the game. And it just happens. Shit, it's just something you can't control.
It's one of those things where it felt like, that was, you kind of mentioned the pieces just kind of all kind of coming together. It did feel like, maybe if that defense is playing with that 2016 group where, Mixon and P. Ryan have a year together in the backfield, Baker's a little bit year older, you've got more experience, that maybe it comes together. But, kind of looking forward to like what Oklahoma has now. It's obviously, I think, is, like you said, kind of spearheaded that, it was the first of 6. And now Oklahoma trying to get back to where they were as far as, losing out on a chance to play for a Big 12 championship game. Just, you mentioned, you speak really highly of Brent Venables, but I mean, as far as like just roster goes, I mean, do you see that talent there to kind of just, not miss much of a beat going into 2022? Is it too hard to tell when, the transfer portal and all this stuff is kind of going crazy?
Yeah, I mean, from the outside looking in, you can only base it off what you've seen during the season. I mean, in the secondary, I think a lot of those guys next year will be a whole lot better. I think they'll be a whole lot tougher. I'm not saying that they're not tough guys now, but I think shit, the offseason with Smitty's, it's gonna bring something different out of you. You know what I'm saying? Which is a good thing. And then, I'm excited about a lot of guys we got in the transfer portal. And obviously seeing them and them getting continuity with the guys that are there. But it's definitely there. I mean, the talent is going to be there. It's just about getting it out those guys, getting the maximum potential out of your guys while you have them. And I think Brent can do that, especially defensively. And obviously, Smitty's going to do that, mentally, physically, emotionally, any type of feeling you have, he's going to do that during the offseason. But it's definitely there, man. Like, there's not, I mean, we talk about the recruiting classes and things like that, but man, this is Oklahoma. You come here for a reason, you get recruited here for a reason, and they offer you for a reason. So everybody's definitely capable in that room. It's just digging inside of those guys and getting them out of them.
And I would imagine, I mean, a big part of that is just like having some of those older guys like a Woody Washington, DJ Graham leading that room. OU has brought in quite a few. I think they brought in 3 defensive back transfers over like the last week. Just having that kind of experience, I'm curious. Just I feel like I know what just kind of knowing how competitive you were at Oklahoma. Just what's that do for a room when like, hey, we've got 3 guys coming in that are gonna be gunning for those jobs? What does that do for a DB room that is, experienced a lot of ridicule? I think and at points rightfully so. I think other times it's just like, it's the Big 12. Guys are gonna make plays. There's 6'5" dudes. You're not gonna win every battle, but what does that do for a DB room when you kind of see, we've got other talent coming in and they're going to be trying for those spots?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has to up the competition level, day in and day out, workouts, skellies, things like that, one-on-ones. It has to up your competition. And I think you'll see it from the guys next year in the fall who would up their competition and who kind of just was okay with being here at OU and just, going through the motions. But that should, I mean, and it's not in a bad way, it's not in a negative way, because they'll get close with those guys that transferred in your position group. You'll get close, but it has to bring a level of competition that you have to go at it every day. Me and JT would have competition every day in practice. Who's going to get their hands on those balls? Who's most interceptions as a whole DB group. The safeties would have their own thing, but me and JT would push each other in that aspect and things like that. And then it's just studying together, man. I know every day after practice, we were watching film. Like, and that was something that I headed. And there's just things like that, little things like that make such a huge difference for the younger guys, for guys that are just coming in, just from continuity as a group. So I think it's going to up the competition level. I think it's great. It's huge for those guys, especially for the younger guys, them coming with some experience and, have played a lot of snaps at their respective schools. So it's good, man. I'm excited about it. And, I talk to DJ every once in a while. I haven't hit him yet. I'm going to let him get his first couple of weeks of Smitty in and get his mind right. But I'm going to talk to him in a little bit. But it's good, man. I think it's huge for us. I think it's really good for us.
I was gonna say, I don't mean to kind of put you on the spot, but it's kind of always hit or miss with like how much alumni are in touch with like who the current players are. But is there anyone on that in that secondary that you're just like really just excited for, I guess, going into 2022 that you think might have a breakout year, or at least like become more of a household name for Oklahoma?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a little biased because DJ, we went to the same high school and it's like my little brother. But Woody, man, I'm excited for Woody. I'm excited for Justin. Coming back 6 years deep. I'm excited for him. And then, it's a whole bunch of young guys, that were plug and play last year that I'm excited to see how they do over the offseason. Once you get a taste of it, man, of that feeling of playing, like, it don't leave. Like, I know my first start, like, I was like, bro, I don't ever want to get off this field. Like, I love this feeling of playing ball. So once you get a taste of it, man, and of course, those guys have made plays. Woody's made plays, JB's made plays, DJ's made plays. It's just bringing the rest of the group up. Obviously, Jaden Davis has made plays as well. So just getting those guys' confidence back. And I think all 3 of them will have a big year. I think they'll all contribute in big ways. And they'll learn, obviously, from the mistakes that they had this year, that's normal. That's what you're supposed to do. You're going to get beat in this game. That's one thing I tell them all the time. Like, bro, the only corner ain't got beat is the one that's on the sideline. So shake that shit off and be ready to make a play when your number's called the next time.
I was gonna say, I don't mean to, call out any of my fellow media members, but I do feel like there are guys that kind of get, not kind of labeled as just, like that guy's just not up to par. And I think you saw that a little bit this past year with a guy like Justin Broyles, who really proved just like why he belongs on the team. How much I'm curious, just from being part of those OU defenses and just being a defensive back in general, really, but like how much is that kind of like that mental makeup add to what you're doing? And I guess just it feels like sometimes people cast aside players and it seems like it's irreparable, like they're never going to come back from what they were. But how much of, I guess, that DB mentality, like, do you see that in those guys, like a, what Oklahoma has, as far as just like this is not as bad as everyone, I guess, maybe talks about?
Right. Yeah, definitely. I think like obviously you brought up JB. I mean, he's kind of like me, man. He's been through the heater. So I tell him, like, bro, I've been firsthand. Trust me, I know. Like I've had those games. I've heard it all. I've seen it all. You just gotta have short term memory, especially the position we play. Like that shit's gonna happen, bro. Like it's inevitable. You can play your best game and still have two bad plays on a game. And that's all people are gonna remember. So it's just knowing that, like, and it's bigger than yourself too. At the same time, you can't get into personal battles with whether it be journalists or fans, and that's what I did early on, and I would go back and forth with guys, and I just tell them, I was like, bro, let me talk the shit for you. Like, don't worry about. I was like, trust me, I'm gonna talk enough for all of y'all in that room. Like, don't worry about it. Let me handle it. That's kind of what I just tell DJs. Like, it just comes with the territory. It comes with the position. If you play DB, quarterback, you're gonna get it regardless, good, bad, and ugly. You're gonna see it all. But you gotta just tune the shit out, man, and get back to knowing what you do and doing what you do, and making plays and just having fun. Like, don't worry about none of the outside noise. Just worry about what you got in front of you.
I guess I bring all that up. Just I do feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect between, like, I guess what fans see, what a player sees. I saw your tweet today, Monday, as we record this, that you were talking about just people that think that college football is better than the NFL just don't know what they're talking about. Which I think I like know what you're getting at, just as far as just like talent wise. Like for me, I'm just like, college football is more entertaining, but I can't sit here and objectively say that this football is better than what is being put out in the NFL. But I do feel like there is a huge disconnect as far as just like what you see, what the fans see. And I kind of go back to like even I remember and I only remember this really because I was flying back from the Orange Bowl 2015. You put out your announcement, and there's fans that are going to be like, kind of say some out of pocket stuff to you, but all of your teammates are like, in your like replies, just congratulating you. And I feel like there's a little bit of a, fans just like not understanding like that you guys are teammates and that you have a goal in mind as far as getting to the next level. And it makes a lot more sense knowing that, you had kind of laid out that was going to be your last year.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you kind of wish that fans, like, just something you wish you could articulate to fans that just don't get, as far as just like something that they might overlook not being in your shoes?
I mean, it's just like, and I got to catch myself sometimes too, just speaking on things, because you don't know like the scheme of things, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't know if a guy has seen a look during that week, and, so it's just a whole bunch that goes into Saturday. Like, fans only see what happens in those 2.5 hours on Saturday, right? They don't see the process of that Monday through Friday dog work that these guys put in. And I'm like, for me with college, like, talking about NFL guys is one thing. Okay, they're grown men, they're professionals. I can understand it. Like, but these, at the end of the day, these are still 18, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids, like, playing in front of millions of people, and people just feel entitled to feel a certain way about how teenagers playing. And I just can't, in my head, like, I can't grasp that. But it's just, I don't think they understand how serious it is to these kids. Like, this isn't just a Saturday where they tailgate and they go get drunk and watch the game with their friends. Like, no, this is their livelihood. This is something that they've done their whole life. Whether it's good, bad, ugly, they're put in there. I promise you, they care more about what happens on that field than you do, so you can go brag about the water cooler shit on Monday to your friends at work. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like there's a disconnect. Fans think they feel like they care more about winning than some of these players that are on the field. And I'm like, that's the most asinine thing I've ever heard in my life. Like, even if you feel like a guy isn't giving his best effort or whatever you may feel like is going on with him, or he just doesn't care that he's out there, I just like wish they could wipe that from their brain. Like, There's nothing. Nobody works harder than those people that are in that building. You know, from the training staff, the coaches, players, everybody, strength staff. I mean, it's a 24/7 thing. Like, so that's just really my biggest thing. Just understand at the end of the day, these are kids. They're not grown men, you know, like these are kids still trying to tune up their game and learn the game and get to the next level. And don't just think like these kids are entitled to make you feel good about a win on a Saturday. Like, that's not their job. And they're not worried about that at the end of the day. So, but you know, some fans just they feel the way they feel, and it's just how they're gonna be. You know, some fans like that. Most of them aren't, but there are ones that feel like this. So
I didn't mean to get too philosophical or anything with you on this pod, but it does kind of, I mean, bring me to just kind of where I want to end it. I mean, I feel like with you, especially just kind of seeing it on your Twitter, like you're very much still in support of the University of Oklahoma. I would imagine being there from 2012 to 2015, you have some, you know, type of admiration for your time there and just kind of look back on it fondly. But I mean, you mentioned just kind of throughout the pod, just you know, this is Oklahoma, and seeing kind of what I think we've seen over the past month and a half of Brent Venables coming back, you know, Bob Stoops coming out of retirement to coach a bowl game, which where else does that happen than Oklahoma?
do that. Exactly.
I can't think of it. I mean, maybe there's like two other schools that could pull someone off the sidelines that out of retirement to come coach a bowl game that would be willing to, but it's a rare thing. But as you kind of look back at, I guess at OU, I'm just, what is, if just to kind of more focus in on that, just kind of general idea of like what Oklahoma means to you. What did that time mean to you? Because you had some big moments, you had some big plays. I'm curious just kind of how you look back at all that.
Man, it's like it was huge, man. It's just huge for me developing as a player, as a man. You know, just going through things through football, things off the field. I just, man, I can't even like put into words how important those 4 years were for me. The relationships, the people I met, like my brothers, you know, Strike, Chef, Tap, just that whole class, the younger guys, Jordan, Dom, you know, Obo. That for me, like that's the biggest thing, man, is seeing those guys like Nev, those younger cats that were there, like go on and be, you know, what they are now. It's just like it's huge, man. Like that makes me feel better than anything. You know, so to be honest, I just wanted to leave my mark on those guys. You know, leave my mark on the fans that cared about it, and just know like shit, I put everything. There wasn't a game that was healthy that I wasn't out there. Whether it was we were getting beat by 40 or whether we were up by 40, you know, I was there. Like I gave my everything. It was so important to me, man. Like Coach Bob, Coach Mike were huge influences on me. Smitty, obviously, just mentally, like I had never been pushed to those depths in my life. So it was just life changing for me, and just it opens your eyes, man. I think just the experience of college in itself is a lot of people miss out on it, but I was just blessed enough to be there and to be around the guys that I did, the coaches that I was there with, and I wouldn't trade it for nothing, man. It was the best 4 years of my life, and I tell these guys that are like leaving for the league, I'm like, bro, you're gonna get money, you're gonna be able to see things and go experience things, but I'm telling you, you're gonna remember those times in college where y'all were broke, everybody's, you know, in the same house and stuff like that. Like you're gonna remember those times more than anything that you do now. Obviously, I mean, until you know you have kids and a wife and all that good stuff. But those were just great days for everybody involved.